Welcome, the most captivating science fiction stories where mystery, action, and love intertwine are here. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. The research vessel Meridian's Edge drifted through the Veil Nebula like a metal seed in cosmic fog, her hull scarred from 3 months of what the diplomats euphemistically called territorial misunderstandings. Dr. Elena Reyes pressed her palm against the observation deck's viewport, watching nebular gases swirl in impossible colors that human eyes weren't designed to process. The ship's atmospheric recyclers hummed with a wheeze that suggested they were overdue for maintenance again. Still staring at the pretty lights, Commander Sarah Voss approached with 2 cups of synthetic coffee that smelled like burnt circuits. You know, most xenobiologists get excited about discovering new life forms, not admiring the wallpaper. Alina accepted the coffee and grimaced at the first sip. This life form is about to discover that our replicators are plotting against us. And those aren't just pretty lights. The spectral analysis shows quantum fluctuations that shouldn't exist in natural nebulae. Something's been stirring the cosmic soup. The ship shuddered slightly as they passed through a density pocket, artificial gravity compensators working overtime. Through the swirling gases, distant stars flickered like dying candles, their light bent and twisted by gravitational anomalies that made navigation a three-dimensional puzzle. Speaking of things that shouldn't exist, Voss pointed toward the tactical display where a new contact had appeared. "We've got company." The alien vessel, materialized from the nebula's embrace like a living thing awakening from sleep. Its hull curved in organic lines that seemed to breathe, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that cascaded along its surface. No human designer would create something so elegantly alien, so fundamentally wrong according to every principle of spacecraft engineering. "Kelari," Alina whispered, recognizing the design from fragmentary intelligence reports. "They're actually here." The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as the crew scrambled to their stations. Lieutenant Torres, the communications officer, looked up from his console with the expression of someone who'd just discovered his universal translator was powered by wishful thinking. "They're broadcasting on 17 different frequencies simultaneously, Commander. The computer can't decide if it's a greeting, a warning, or dinner recipes." "Maybe it's all three," Alina suggested. "Some cultures consider hospitality and intimidation to be closely related concepts." The alien ship moved with fluid grace that defied conventional propulsion theory, positioning itself alongside the Meridian's Edge without visible engines or reaction thrusters. Through the viewport, Alina could see docking tubes extending like crystalline tentacles, seeking purchase on the human vessel's hull. "Ma'am," Torres called out, his voice cracking slightly, "they're requesting permission to board, I think. Either that or they're asking for our surrender in 17 different ways." Voss studied the tactical readouts with the calm expression of someone who'd spent her career preparing for moments like this. "Dr. Reyes, you're our resident expert on impossible things. What's your professional opinion?" Alina watched the docking procedure with fascination. The Kelari tubes interfaced with their airlock systems as if they'd been designed for each other, which was either remarkable coincidence or terrifying prescience. "My professional opinion is that we're about to find out if first contact protocols work better in practice than they do in committee meetings," she said. "Also, I'd recommend keeping the coffee locked away. If their sense of taste is anything like their sense of aesthetics, they might consider it a biological weapon." The docking process completed with a soft chime that somehow conveyed both welcome and warning. The ship's internal sensors detected atmospheric pressure equalizing, followed by the distinctive hiss of airlock cycling. Somewhere in the depths of the vessel, two species were about to meet face to face for the first time. Alina followed Voss toward the main airlock, her scientific curiosity warring with the primitive human instinct that suggested running in the opposite direction. The corridor lighting flickered as they passed, either a malfunction or the ship's way of expressing its own nervousness about the situation. They reached the airlock just as the inner door cycled open, revealing their visitors in all their alien glory. The Kalari boarding party moved with predatory grace, their forms humanoid but subtly wrong in ways that made Alina's pattern recognition centers send confused signals. They were tall, athletic, with skin that held an almost luminous quality under the ship's artificial lighting. But it was their ears that marked them as definitively other, elongated and pointed, tapering to delicate tips that seemed to twitch with independent awareness. The lead figure, clearly female by human standards of interpretation, possessed features that would have been classically beautiful if not for the crystalline blade humming at her side, and the expression of barely contained violence in her luminous amber eyes. "Welcome aboard the Meridian's Edge asterisk," Voss began, following first contact protocols with admirable composure. "I am Commander Sarah Voss, representing the United Earth Colonial Authority." The alien woman tilted her head, those distinctive ears shifting as if sampling sounds beyond human hearing. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in Alina's bones. "Your words carry the taste of formal ritual," she said in perfectly accented English, "but your crew's biorhythms suggest readiness for conflict. Which truth should I believe?" Alina blinked in surprise. "You speak our language." "We have been listening to your transmissions for some time, Dr. Reyes." The alien's gaze fixed on Alina with uncomfortable precision. "Your species broadcasts its thoughts across the void with remarkable enthusiasm. We have learned much about human nature from your entertainment frequencies." "Oh no," Alina muttered. "Please tell me you didn't base your understanding of humanity on our reality television shows." Something that might have been amusement flickered across the alien's features. "Your concern is noted. We filtered our analysis through multiple data sources, including your scientific journals and military communications. Though I admit, your fictional narratives provided fascinating insights into human psychology." The tension in the corridor eased slightly, replaced by the universal awkwardness of cultural exchange between species that had evolved on different worlds under different stars. Alina found herself studying the alien woman's equipment with professional interest. The crystalline blade at her side seemed to shift color depending on the viewing angle, and her clothing appeared to be woven from metallic fibers that moved with organic fluidity. "Your technology integrates living systems with crystalline matrices," Alina observed. "That should be impossible according to our understanding of material science." "Your understanding assumes that matter and consciousness are separate phenomena," the alien replied. "We have learned to encourage cooperation between what you call living and non-living systems." The diplomatic moment was interrupted by the ship's emergency klaxons blaring to life. Commander Voss's communicator crackled with urgent reports from the bridge. More Kalari vessels were emerging from the nebula. Their intentions unclear, but their numbers sufficient to turn the diplomatic meeting into something considerably more dangerous. "It appears," the alien woman said with what Alina was beginning to recognize as dry humor, "that your crew's preparation for conflict was more prescient than my people's optimism about peaceful contact." The lights flickered again, and Alina realized they weren't dealing with a simple malfunction. The Kalari ship was interfacing with their systems on levels she hadn't thought possible, its crystalline technology spreading through the Meridian's edge like digital roots seeking purchase in electronic soil. The emergency lighting bathed the corridors in crimson shadows, as Dr. Alina Reyes found herself separated from Commander Voss in the chaos that followed the arrival of the Kalari fleet. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated with each power surge, making her stumble through passages that suddenly felt alien despite 3 months of familiarity. Emergency bulkheads had sealed automatically, dividing the vessel into isolated sections where human and Kalari crew members eyed each other with varying degrees of suspicion. Alina pressed herself against the wall as a group of Kalari warriors glided past, their crystalline weapons casting prismatic reflections on the metal surfaces. Their movement held an unsettling quality, too fluid for human physiology, as if they'd learned to negotiate with gravity rather than simply endure it. She noticed how their elongated ears tracked sounds she couldn't hear, swiveling independently like organic sensor arrays. "Lost, Dr. Reyes." The voice came from behind her, carrying those familiar harmonic undertones that seemed to resonate in her chest cavity. Alina turned to find the alien woman from the airlock, her amber eyes reflecting the emergency lighting with an almost predatory gleam. Up close, Alina could see how the Kalari's weapon wasn't simply carried, but somehow integrated with her nervous system. Hairline filaments of crystalline material traced up her arm like luminous veins. "Just taking the scenic route," Alina replied, hoping humor might diffuse whatever this encounter was building toward. "Though I have to say, your people have really redecorated the place. Very post-apocalyptic chic." The alien woman's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Your species uses humor as a defensive mechanism when faced with uncertainty. It is endearing in a primitive sort of way." "Primitive?" Alina raised an eyebrow. "Says the person whose civilization apparently never invented door locks. Your boarding parties just waltzed right through our security systems like they were made of tissue paper and good intentions." "Your security assumes that technology and biology are separate domains," the alien explained, approaching with that unnervingly fluid gait. "We simply convinced your ship systems that we belonged here. Machines are remarkably susceptible to suggestion when you speak their language properly." Alina backed toward what she hoped was still a human-controlled section of the ship. "And what language is that, exactly?" "Binary with a few firmware complements thrown in." "Quantum harmonics," the alien said, as if this explained everything. "Your computers process information in discrete states, but consciousness exists in superposition. We sing to the spaces between your ones and zeros." The corridor shuddered as something large impacted the ship's hull. Through the viewports, Alina caught glimpses of more Kalari vessels emerging from the nebula's embrace, their organic curves making the human fleet look like geometric afterthoughts against the cosmic backdrop. "This is either going to be the most interesting first contact in human history," Alina muttered, "or the shortest." "That depends," the alien woman said, her weapon beginning to emit a low harmonic that made Alina's teeth ache, "on whether your Dr. Harrison is still aboard this vessel." Alina froze. "How do you know about James?" The alien's expression shifted, losing its predatory edge and gaining something that looked almost vulnerable. "We have met before, he and I. Before the conflicts began. Before your people decided that diplomacy was less efficient than territorial expansion." "Wait," Alina said, pieces of an impossible puzzle beginning to align in her mind. "You're saying humans and Kalari have had contact before. That's not in any of the mission briefings." "Your briefings contain many omissions," the alien replied. 3 of your years ago, there was a classified first contact program. James Harrison was part of the cultural exchange team. I was assigned as liaison to help bridge the gap between our species." The ship's intercom crackled to life with Commander Voss's voice, tense but controlled. "All personnel, report to designated safe zones. We are currently negotiating with the Kalari fleet to establish peaceful communication protocols." Alina snorted. "Peaceful protocols, right? Because nothing says, 'Let's talk this over,' like showing up with enough firepower to turn a star system into decorative debris. Your military commander speaks of negotiation, while her weapons remain armed and targeting our vessels," the alien observed. "Perhaps humans are not the only species guilty of mixed signals." A new alarm joined the cacophony. The distinctive wail that indicated hull breach protocols were in effect. Somewhere on the ship, the marriage between human and Kalari technology had produced offspring that neither side had anticipated. "I don't suppose your people have a plan for what happens when two..." The ship's laboratory had been transformed into something that would have made Alina's former professors either weep or apply for grants, depending on their tolerance for impossible physics. Crystalline growth sprouted from the walls where Kelari technology had interfaced with human systems, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to respond to thought as much as electrical current. Alina watched a quantum spectrometer argue with what appeared to be a sentient crystal formation about proper calibration procedures. "I have to admit," she said to Lyreley, who was coaxing harmonics from her blade that made the lab's equipment hum in sympathy, "this is either the most advanced scientific collaboration in history, or we're about to accidentally invent a new form of catastrophic failure." Lyreley's ears twitched in what Alina had learned to recognize as amusement. "Your equipment possesses remarkable stubbornness. It insists on measuring discrete values when reality clearly prefers quantum superposition." "That's humans for you," Alina replied, watching her computer screen display readings that violated several fundamental laws of physics while somehow remaining internally consistent. "We like our universe to pick a side and stick with it. All this may be that quantum business makes us nervous." James emerged from behind a console that was now partially organic, holding a data pad that flickered between displaying human text and Kelari harmonic patterns. His hair stood at odd angles, suggesting he'd been running his hands through it while contemplating the impossible. "The plague samples Lyreley provided are definitely artificial," he announced, "but they're not exactly a weapon, more like a side effect." Alina looked up from her spectrometer, which had apparently reached a philosophical détente with its crystalline partner. "A side effect of what?" "Early human experiments in dimensional folding technology," James said, his expression grim. "About 7 years ago, there was a classified project called Doorway Protocol. The goal was to create stable wormholes for instantaneous travel between star systems." "Let me guess," Alina said. "It didn't go exactly as planned. The test site was in uninhabited space, or so we thought. The quantum resonance cascade from the failed experiments interacted with the unique substrate of the Kelari homeworld in ways nobody anticipated." Lyreley's blade sang a particularly mournful note. "The plague spreads through quantum entanglement networks that connect all matter on our world. What your scientists thought was empty space contained the root systems of our civilization." Alina stared at the data streaming across her screens. "You're telling me that humanity accidentally poisoned an entire world while trying to build a cosmic subway system?" "The irony," Lyreley observed, "is that your dimensional folding technology would have worked perfectly if it had been harmonized with existing quantum substrates rather than imposed upon them. Your species tends to engineer solutions rather than negotiate with the universe." "Well, when you put it like that, we sound almost reasonable," Alina muttered, "in a catastrophically short-sighted sort of way." The laboratory shuddered as another wave of interference passed through the ship. Outside the viewports, both human and Kelari fleets maintained their tense standoff, weapons powered but not yet firing. Alina could see the commanders of both sides running calculations on their tactical displays, trying to determine if cooperation or annihilation offered better odds of survival. "Captain Voss is not going to be happy when she realizes this entire conflict is basically a cleanup operation," Alina said. "Nothing quite like discovering that your diplomatic mission is actually a pollution control initiative." Lyreley manipulated her blade's harmonics, coaxing new frequencies from the crystalline matrix. "The cure requires synthesis of human mathematical precision with Kelari harmonic intuition. Neither approach alone can stabilize the quantum cascade that maintains the plague." "Of course it does," Alina said, "because nothing in this situation could possibly be simple. I don't suppose your people have a manual for interdimensional plague removal for dummies. Our knowledge is stored in living crystal matrices that respond to emotional resonance," Lyreley explained. The information cannot be simply downloaded. It must be experienced, felt, understood on levels beyond conscious analysis. Alina watched her instruments register readings that made her question everything she'd learned about how the universe was supposed to work. So we need to feel our way through quantum mechanics while performing calculations that require the emotional depth of advanced mathematics. This is either going to be brilliant, or we're about to discover new and creative ways to fail. James looked up from his data pad, which was now displaying equations in three-dimensional holographic form. The good news is that the plague spread follows predictable patterns once you account for quantum entanglement networks. And the bad news? Alina asked, though she suspected she already knew. The solution requires both fleets to lower their shields and link their quantum processing cores, James said. We need to create a harmonic resonance field that spans both human and Kelari technology. Alina blinked. You want two mutually suspicious fleets to voluntarily make themselves completely vulnerable to each other, while attempting an experimental procedure that's never been tested. When you phrase it like that, James admitted, it does sound somewhat optimistic. The intercom crackled to life with Commander Voss's voice, tense but controlled. Dr. Reyes, report to the bridge immediately. The Kelari fleet is requesting a joint scientific conference, and apparently you've been specifically requested by name. Alina looked at Lyreley, who was studying her with those luminous amber eyes. I don't suppose this is because of my charming personality and natural diplomatic skills. Your biorhythms suggest curiosity rather than fear, Lyreley said. It is unusual. Most humans encountering our technology display stress patterns associated with territorial defense. Most humans haven't spent their careers studying impossible things, Alina replied. Besides, it's hard to feel territorial about a universe that keeps changing the rules every time you think you understand them. The laboratory's hybrid systems pulsed in unison, human and Kelari technology, finding common ground in the space between logic and intuition. Alina realized that the real breakthrough wasn't technical. It was the recognition that two fundamentally different approaches to understanding reality could coexist without one having to dominate the other. You know, she said, watching the crystalline growths respond to her voice with shifting patterns of light, if we actually pull this off, we're going to have to rewrite every textbook in the known galaxy. Your textbooks assume that knowledge is a possession to be acquired, Lyreley observed. Perhaps it is time to consider that understanding might be a relationship to be cultivated. Alina grinned. Now you're talking my language. Though I should probably warn you, human scientists have a terrible track record when it comes to maintaining healthy relationships with the universe. The ship shuddered again, but this time the motion felt different. Not the jarring impact of external forces, but the deep harmonic vibration of systems finding resonance with each other. Through the viewports, Alina could see both fleets beginning to adjust their positions, moving from confrontational formations into something that looked almost like a dance. Time to find out, she said, heading toward the bridge, whether we're about to make history or become a very interesting footnote in the annals of cosmic diplomacy. James and Lyreley followed, the crystalline blade's harmonics weaving through the ship's mechanical rhythms like a song that bridged the gap between species. Alina realized that whatever happened next, the universe had just become a considerably more interesting place to study, assuming they all survived long enough to publish their findings. The bridge of the asterisk meridian's edge had transformed into something that no naval architect had ever imagined. A hybrid command center, where crystalline Kelari interfaces grew alongside human tactical displays like technological coral. Alina stood at the center of it all, her hands dancing across controls that responded to both touch and thought, while Lyreley's blade served as a focusing array for quantum frequencies that bridged the gap between two civilizations. Fleet status report, Commander Voss called out, her voice carrying the controlled tension of someone orchestrating the most complex diplomatic ballet in human history. Human vessels report quantum cores synchronized and shields lowered, Lieutenant Torres announced. Kelari fleet confirms harmonic alignment across all ship songs. Both sides are as vulnerable as we're going to get without actually painting targets on our hulls. Alina watched the energy readings climb on displays that showed impossible value with matter-of-fact precision. You know, when I chose xenobiology as a career, I was expecting to study interesting microorganisms, not participate in interstellar group therapy sessions. Lyralay's ears twitched with amusement, even as her concentration remained fixed on the harmonic patterns flowing through her weapon. Your species categorizes cooperation as therapeutic treatment. This explains much about human political systems. Don't knock therapy, Alina replied, adjusting quantum field parameters that would have been pure science fiction 6 hours earlier. Sometimes the only way to solve a problem is to admit you created it in the first place and ask for help cleaning up the mess. The space between the fleets began to shimmer as overlapping quantum fields achieved resonance. Alina felt the moment when human mathematical precision merged with Kelari emotional intuition. Not a conquest of one approach by another, but a synthesis that created something entirely new. Her instruments registered the birth of hybrid equations that solved problems neither species could have tackled alone. Plague response is stabilizing across 17 Kelari worlds. James reported from his position at the communications array, which now resembled a living tree of crystalline branches. The quantum cascade is reversing itself. Reality is remembering how to stay stable. That's poetic, Alina said, watching matter itself learn to trust its own existence again. Though I have to ask, how exactly does reality forget how to be real? That seems like the kind of basic skill you'd want to hold on to. Consciousness shapes quantum probability, Lyralay explained, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the bridge systems. When your experiments disrupted the quantum substrate of our worlds, they created uncertainty cascades. Matter began to doubt its own existence. Alina blinked. So we accidentally gave an entire star system an existential crisis. In essence, yes. Well, Alina said, making final adjustments to the quantum harmonics while reality stabilized around them. At least we're consistent. Humans have been giving each other existential crises for millennia. It's nice to know we can expand our expertise to the galactic level. The energy patterns flowing between the fleets reached crescendo, and Alina felt the moment when the solution locked into place. Human logic providing mathematical structure, while Kelari intuition guided the emotional resonance that convinced matter to trust itself again. The plague retreated across space like a tide going out, leaving stable